Good day. In this video, we will look at a humanoid machine encountered in Facility 3826, as well as a modified version in the third DLC of the game, Enchantment Under the Sea, and where and how it might have been built. The RAF-9 engineer was developed to help designers, workers in assembly shops, and architects. For the first time, the robot was equipped with high-precision manipulator arms, which largely freed humans from manual labor. It performs a full range of technical activities aimed primarily towards the production, operation, and maintenance of various equipment. The engineer is capable of interacting with metal cutting, woodworking, stone cutting, and other similar machines, as well as with complex computing machines. All engineer models have protocols for the optimal repair of simple non-robotic equipment. The robot's body is white, quite large and pot-bellied, while the arms are equipped with powerful manipulators with high precision that can rotate, with its limbs being made out of the fourth iteration of the material known as polymer technology alloy. It is also capable of discharging polymer during an attack, and this polymer will either be on fire or will look green and possibly acidic. The engineer weighs in at 95 kilograms, that's 209 pounds, is capable of speeds of 15 kilometers an hour or 9.3 miles, and appears to be around 180 centimeters tall, that's 5.9 feet. This makes his specifications almost exactly like the specs of the VOV-A6 robot, which we looked at in a previous video. Physically, the robot is very strong and can be seen in-game lifting a four-door vehicle with its claws for repairs. The vehicle actually resembles the real Lada 2101, which in reality weighed under 1 ton. However, the engineer slightly lifted the frontal section of the car for a person to climb under and not the entire vehicle itself. But still, the strength the machine possessed speaks for itself. The robot quickly won the trust and love of citizens due to its ability to communicate, which earned it the nickname Rafik. It would always find itself in the center of public attention. These machines can often be found in the role of a waiter or even a bartender at show events. It has found a place for itself not only in enterprises, but also in everyday life, easily performing the functions of a cleaner, electrician, mechanic, and plumber, freeing people from the daily routine. Internally, the engineer does not copy the internal system of a human, unlike the lab assistant robot. However, interestingly, the appearance of the engineer's brain does resemble a human one in concept art and to some extent in game. Upon defeat, it drops an energy module, superconductors, chemicals, microelectronics, metal parts, and synthetic material. As of the third DLC, we encounter two variants of this machine. The first is the standard RAF that attacks the player in close combat with its claws. And the second RAF in the DLC has no claws and instead uses an energy wave gun that disorientates and damages the player, and a sphere on a cable which it uses as a wrecking ball to attack the protagonist. Other differences between the two include a slightly different coloring scheme, with the original's frame being white and the DLC variants being white and orange. In artwork and trailers for the game, a version can be spotted that is painted in such a way to make it look as though it's wearing a tuxedo and a mustache, although this appears to be only cosmetic. Starting with the engineer's model name, unlike the VOV-A6 that we looked at in the previous video and couldn't decipher its origins, the RAF is actually much simpler in this regard. There actually existed a vehicle with the same abbreviation, RAF, and also had the nickname Rafik, just like the in-game robot. To add some context to the real history of the abbreviation RAF, the name would be the result of two factories merging into one, that being the Riga Experimental Automobile Factory and the Riga Auto Repair Plant No. 2 in 1951. After this point, the enterprise would be known as the Riga Autobus Factory, which, as the name suggests, produced buses. The factory actually produced only one RAF-10 bus and 3 RAF-8 buses in total, but there were no RAF-9. The number in the name actually indicated the number of seats in the vehicle in the 8 and 10 version at least. Many buses, however, were manufactured in the RAF-900 range, and they included microbuses, pickups, vans, standard buses, and multi-sectional buses. Returning to the world of Atomic Heart, we can assume that the factory in Riga was probably the first place to produce the engineer robot after the Second World War. Possibly it was either repurposed or develops the Rafik robots in parallel with the buses, or the robots simply inherited the name. Although RAF could also stand for Riga Automaton Factory to accommodate for in-game lore. Little is actually told about how the RAF-9 functions internally, but a number of assumptions can be made when looking at its physical appearance in-game and in concept art. The limbs appear to be quite simple in design. The robotic legs can be separated into three parts, that being the foot, the lower leg, and the thigh. The thigh connects the leg to the lower part of the body as standard, but what is interesting is that it is not the only connection. There is a secondary connection to the body which looks like a dual hydraulic piston system. One piston is visible connecting the lower body and attaching behind the knee, and then another is seen attached from the knee to the back of the foot. The knee itself could be either using a permanent magnet rotor or possibly connection made from a universal joint. A universal joint would be free swinging, which would make the piston in charge of the movement. However, for a more powerful limb, magnet rotors might be the better option here. The arms can also be separated into three sections, that being the upper arm, forearm, and the hand. Unlike the legs, the arms do appear much simpler in design, resembling slightly curved metal bars. They also have the same dual piston system as seen with the legs. However, the pistons do not connect to the body but rather just stop right before the shoulder. This dual piston system connects to the front of the elbow and then to the wrist. These limbs seem to resemble modern exoskeletons but have a more simplified design. This would allow the engineer to apply more force or move faster, which we actually see. If there is distance between it and the player, the engineer can close that distance by jumping on all fours or dash forward, spinning its claws in the process. The hands, or more appropriately the claws of the engineer, look like those seen in claw machines in arcades or in factories. And this is likely the inspiration, as the in-game description refers to these as high-precision manipulator arms. Each claw looks like a metal finger which is multi-sectional, allowing for more accurate gripping of objects, whether it's machine parts or delicate glassware. Although it does not appear as such, the claws likely have a number of inbuilt sensors, such as force sensors and tactile sensors, allowing it to know how much force needs to be exerted to grip an object. In reality, these tend to be rubber or gel pads, with researchers creating systems that scan the surface with cameras, and using that information, a machine makes the decision on how hard to grasp it and how it should be moved. We do not see any rubber or gel pads on the tips of the engineer's claws, but there could be cameras built into the gap at the center of claw that judges what kind of object is being grasped. They are also capable of 360-degree rotation, as during an attack the engineer will always use its claws that will rotate at fast speeds, like blades in a blender, in an attempt to slice into the victim. It is said that the extremities are made out of the fourth iteration of the polymer material alloy technology, which is more than likely referring to the claws and legs. Even though the strength of this fictional material is unknown, we do see that it is capable of withstanding serious punishment from the protagonist. If we consider the use of the fictional in-game material, it could be said that the claws are outfitted with a servo motor to allow for that 360-degree rotation, as well as a gearbox that increases torque if the servo motor slows down. However, there is also what is called slew motor that allows for everything the servo motor provides, and it is capable of withstanding much heavier loads. In reality, this motor is quite large, but if it was reduced in size while still keeping its effectiveness in the world of Atomic Heart, it could be a great option. It is also not far-fetched to assume that the claws are detachable, allowing for them to be replaced by something else entirely. In the concept art, the limbs are seen to be connected to circular devices that probably function like ball and socket joints. This is visible in-game for the arms. However, the leg spheres are protected by the outer casing. What might be more appropriate for an industrial machine joint, in this case that is cheap and reliable, are universal joints, which is essentially two rods connected by a cross shaft. The reason for this is that it can still be assumed that the arms have all the wiring and electronics going through it, and much of the chips that control the sensors could be implemented into the spheres that the joints are attached to. This does, however, make it problematic to implement permanent magnetic rotors specifically into the elbows, but considering that the arms do appear to be nothing more than slightly curved metal bars, this might be appropriate. Moving to the abdomen, in the concept art we can actually take a look inside the machine. And what is unusually interesting is that it appears to have an upside-down futuristic-looking speaker cone with wiring and a tube from this cone moving up into the head. What exactly is this cone is unknown. Possibly another version of the in-game cold fusion system established by the lore that works on polymer. The engineer can be separated into two parts in this section, with a rod connecting the lower part and upper part of the body. This upside-down futuristic-looking speaker looks like early versions of the transport and energy module the Russian company Rosatom is developing for the transportation of large cargo in deep space. Being a module, it is designed to attach to a space station and operate as a nuclear reactor feeding the station energy for long-haul flights. It is likely just a coincidence that an energy module for space stations resembles a robot energy module in a fictional video game. Moving to the upper torso, in the concept art it appears to be quite empty on the inside with just wiring present and no frame to reinforce the arms. Considering that it lifted a vehicle, this section seems to be capable of handling immense stress even without a reinforced frame. The wiring from the speaker goes into a long-angled neck which sits on a spherical device similar to the ones connecting the limbs to the body. However, the neck connection does appear to be hollow, which allows the wiring to pass through into the head. An interesting design could be a gimbal system popular in providing support to camera and smartphones during filming to capture fluid shots. The internal section can be hollow, allowing wiring to pass through without impeding movement. Moving on to the head, it is a smooth metal case with a slight alien-looking design with big round eyes. Internally, the lower section has a cylinder to which a red tube connects to, possibly made out of rubber. This cylinder attaches to a metal block just above it. This seems to be the central area as the eyes, wiring coming from the neck, and what looks like a glowing brain are attached to this metallic box. It should be said that the brain does not glow in the game, but rather it is gold in color. Considering that this is a robot used in industrial environments, the robot's eyes appear to look like large glowing lights with the ability to open and close. It is possible that they are in fact meant to be flashlights to light up dark areas with the main optic placed in the very center. We can assume that the AI computer is the large brain-shaped device, which seems very unusual. This leads to the question why this machine had a different brain design compared to the VOV-A6. Possibly this was an early housing design for AI. We do know that the engineer is less aggressive towards the protagonist. Even in their combat mode, they will not attack unless the player attacks first, making us assume that this was an early version of AI that, to some extent, has algorithms that are prioritized over those commands given to it through the collective system. Additionally, the engineer can be used as a mainframe of sorts. We see this in the maglev train in-game with the engineer working as a bartender. Upon the protagonist showing aggression, he is told that the engineer essentially is the train's computer and that destroying it will put the entire train out of commission. If the engineer is attacked, the red tube detaches from its face and it is capable of attacking the player by spitting out a green acidic substance or flame, which is referred to as polymer discharge. This indicates that it uses polymer to operate, and in previous videos we said that polymer is used as a lubricant in robots as well as a source of energy for its cold fusion reactor. It is interesting how this robot is able to discharge polymer in an acidic state or engulfed in flames. Possibly, if the engineer is an older machine, it is also powered by toxic chemicals or by some combination of nuclear and cold fusion energy. The polymer might absorb the radiation from the nuclear reactor, making it acidic and flammable, although none of this is confirmed in-game and is just an assumption. The engineer in the DLC, Enchantment Under the Sea, is mostly similar to the original version with some changes to the limbs and the weapons it uses. On both of its forearms, we see a small amount of shielding or armor. On its left arm, this new version of the engineer has a wrecking ball-type weapon with the coloring scheme resembling a buoy. When it attacks, it will use it to attempt to crush the player, with the ball having electric sparks coming off of it, making it look almost energized during the attack. A few seconds after it hits the ground, an electrified energy explosion occurs, dealing additional damage. On its right arm, it possesses an energy cannon that is capable of blasting energy waves, disorientating the player, and if prolonged exposure occurs, it could outright kill a person. We do not know what energy waves these are exactly, but in one of the animated death screens we can spot the character's eyes and ears bursting, as though the brain burst in its skull. Similar to directed energy weapons in reality, it could be microwave energy directed at people, which causes water molecules in the body to heat up, causing extreme pain and discomfort. In the United States, tests were conducted with a non-lethal active denial system which projected a focused beam of high-frequency microwave radiation. In theory, if someone developed a strong enough energy weapon that could emit a strong enough microwave beam, it may be able to heat up the brain tissue, causing cell damage and swelling. The idea of the engineer using a microwave weapon is also supported by the fact that the player will find it difficult to move quickly. Microwave energy is known to disrupt neurological functions in the body, or in other words, it scrambles the signals sent to the muscles. This could result in sluggish movement, slowed reactions, or poor coordination. With the protagonist being a heavily modified soldier, They will only experience slowed movement, but it is likely that if the robot's energy weapon hits a normal person, then they will likely die. What should be noted is that in the game it is hinted that the engineer's modifications in the DLC are the result of the Atomic Heart program. Based on this, we can assume that the original engineer model was designed and manufactured prior to the secret meeting of the Communist Party on February 14th of 1951, which approved the Atomic Heart project. This explains why the original engineer does not attack unless provoked, as programming code used before 1951 did not include combat mode, and that would be added later. But it would still not be able to fully override the machine's non-aggressive state, only preferring to attack if provoked. Overall, we do not get a lot of lore from the game as to how the engineer works internally, but it is interesting to make assumptions based on the information available. Based on the name, it was built in the city of Riga for industrial work and possesses a reinforced chassis. It tends to remain non-hostile until provoked, attacking the protagonist by trying to cut through them with its claws or discharging acidic or flame-engulfed polymer. It seems to show what could happen if someone combines the idea of a modern exoskeleton and an industrial robotic arm used in manufacturing, with the game directly outlining that it uses high-precision manipulator arms. More so, it is not only limited to industrial environments, as it is used in various other sectors, doing tasks relating to electronics, cleaning, plumbing, military, and is even the primary computer system for the maglev train as seen in-game. This robot seems to be an attempt to create a jack of all trades that could work in every sector without too much issues, helping humanity in its endeavors, whether computational or physical, while having an appealing appearance.